and I'd ask Russian Bradley to come in, because I know that she's aware of how this happened.
Did Russian Bradley go to you and say that you should change your work base, or did you go to her?
Well, I'll let Russian Bradley answer that question.
I suggested it.
You suggested it? On what basis?
Because at the time, I suppose previously...
And your role, Miss Bradley?
Head of HR.
So you requested that the CEO,
let me just
who was in executive management level, you requested him to change his work?
Well, I suggested it. I suggested it to the chair, first of all, to see if that was something that would be appropriate, and then I suggested it to the CEO. I should say to you, at the time, the remote strategy, the remote working strategy for Ireland had come out, and I was rewriting policy.
I'm conscious of the clock.
So I just
Mr. O'Donnell had a contract in place.
Yes.
What was his work base within the contract?
The location was City West, but there was nothing preventing me from changing it.
That's all I asked.
Yeah.
It was a signed contract.
That's correct.
It was legally binding.
Yes.
Okay. So you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. O'Donnell has established that the chair and the head of HR agreed verbally in November 2021.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you aware if the chair has executive decision-making powers?
I genuinely believed that if the chairman said that he could do it, that I didn't realise that any other further requirement was necessary.
Your director of HR.
Yeah.
Should you not have established that?
That's the reason why I checked with the chair, and if the chair said it was okay, I didn't believe. I figured that I'm just telling you honestly, I believe that to be the case, that it was okay.
Yeah, and in terms of drawing up a new contract, I presume you drew up a new contract.
I drew up a letter with acts as an addendum to the contract, and I copied it by the chair.
Can we get a furnished copy of that contract? Do we have it?
This is the letter that they're talking about in November.
And can you present that to this committee?
Yeah.
Of course.
And who signed that contract?
No, I signed it.
Who else?
Just myself.
So you took the unilateral decision to change his work base?
With the advice, with the consent of the chair, yes.
With the consent?
Yes.
The chair had no executive powers in decision making. It had to go before the board.
Well, as I said, I wasn't aware of that fact, and the chair didn't advise me of that fact either.
Who didn't?
The chair.
But in terms of good corporate governance, proper legal contract arrangements, his original contract had stated that headquarters were in City West. So you took the decision.
I should say to you that I would take decisions like this during the normal course of work,
but not for not for a chief executive.
Okay, I understand that, and now I know. But I can say to you that I believed that on the basis that I had the consent of the chair, and he is copied on that letter, I should say.
Mr. O'Donnell, you also sit on the board. Is that correct?
I did sit on the board, yes.
Did you bring this to the board's attention?
I didn't bring it to the board's attention.
Why not?
Because, as I've stated, I think about 3 times already today.
But do you not think that was a really important thing to bring to the board members?
Can I answer the question? I didn't bring it to the attention of the board. The chair and the head of HR were aware of it.
My question is,
if I had thought at the time, Deputy, that I should have brought it to the attention of the entire board, I would have done that.
Do you not think that is an important decision in the context of your contract? Did you try and conceal it from the board?
Well, I think, Deputy, the fact that the chair was aware of it.
This was
Deputy.
You're in the public accounts.
I am.
I'm asking the question.
I am.
So this was a cosy arrangement between the HR director and the CEO. Because no one else was aware of it. Is that correct?
Can I say? It's not correct. It wasn't a cosy arrangement.
But you never brought it to the board.
The chairperson of the board, of any board, discusses and talks with their fellow colleagues on a regular basis. The fact that the chairman was aware of it.
When the chairman resigned.
As far as I'm concerned, at that point, it was okay.
Okay. Question: when the chairman resigned, when was the decision made? Was it after the chairman resigned or before the chairman resigned, when you actually signed that letter?
Well before.
Well before?
Yeah, like a year maybe beforehand.
A year before. Okay.
wouldn't. Sorry, just for the record, it was probably if it's November 21. The chair resigned in late April 22. So just for the record, Chair.
And you never thought to bring that to the board's attention?
I didn't see any issue with it at the time. I keep stating that.
Do you think Paul Reid would have changed his work base as head of the HSE and said, well, I'm going to change my workplace to Leitrim, even though HSE's headquarters are in Dublin?
I'm not going to comment about what any other executive does.
This
I'm here to account for myself,
well, we're here
not
to
for
talk,
any other executive.
We're here
deputy.
to talk about governance. We're here to talk about protecting the taxpayer.
Yes.
The taxpayer was put on the tune for an additional €5,000 because of your HR's director, both of you, entering an arrangement which seems absolutely ridiculous in nature, and then to be caught on the basis of the Standard for Internal Control, the CNAG, and you're here to answer questions in relation to it.
There's nobody, Deputy, caught here. Everything that we do...
You reversed the decision. On what grounds?
Sure, I've already spoke to that.
On what grounds?
The CNAG pointed out they were clearly of the view that they should have gone to a full board decision. This is probably my 5th time saying that. The Section 18 appointees who have just joined IFI,
which only happened this year.
Can I finish?
Which only happened this year, Mr. O'Donnell.
Either Chair, I'm going to be allowed to answer a question, or I'm being badgered here. I think it's unfair.
If you're asking a question or making a charge, I do want to give the witness a chance.
It either has to be a question or a statement. I mean, I can't answer a statement. It's either a question or if it's a statement, I can't answer that, Chair.
Please respond.
Could you repeat the question, please, Deputy?
You entered a contract on a unilateral basis with your HR director. Never got board consent. Do you think that's acceptable?
I think in the context of how it happened, why it happened, and when it happened, it was done in absolute good faith. I did it in good faith then, so...
you were the only beneficiary of this?
Well, actually, how is that the case?
Because the headquarters of IFI are in City West.
Okay,
that's where you should be based.
Then I would ask you the question, and if the office was only open 1 day a week...
you only changed. We were well out of COVID when you actually made that change.
We weren't well out of COVID, and our office was only open 1 day a week at the time.
When did you change your work base? What date?
I think it's November 21.
When did you change your work base back to hit City West?
I can supply the record to the meeting. I don't know exactly what it is.
I'll ask the HR director.
No, just roughly what at the time did you use Ballyshannon? I don't ask. I know you can't remember.
Well, I've claimed no expenses for being in Dublin.
That's not the question I asked. When did you change back your work base?
Probably a fortnight ago. I officially wrote to the 2 Section 18 members. This is a discussion. This was part of a process.
Is that acceptable, Miss Bradley?
I have to say that there was a number of things.
Do you not ask for him to, since it was your suggestion in the first place, when we entered out of COVID, that he should revert back to City West?
Let me just say to you, it wasn't purely for COVID reasons that I came up with this suggestion.
But you said previously it was related to COVID.
That's,
when Mr.
O'Donnell did. I said that wasn't my only consideration. I was looking at a number of things. So first of all, the remote working strategy was talking about redeploying people back into rural settings. That's the first thing. The second thing is there has always been a bit of a them and us in terms of Dublin versus the regions, and I've redeployed, like say my learning development manager job is advertised in Ballina and Limerick. In the past it would have been in Dublin.
Mr. O'Donnell, have you claimed expenses in 2023? Mr. O'Donnell.
Sorry?
Have you claimed expenses in 2023?
Of course I've claimed expenses in 2023. I travel all over the country for IFI.
To go to your headquarters in City West, have you claimed expenses?
I have claimed expenses.
Overnights.
And overnights, which...
Do you think that's reasonable? Or justified?
I have paid back the expenses from the start date of the Section 18 members. I can't speak for them because they're not here today, but my conversation with them was, what happened under a previous board happened under a previous board. If the previous chairperson signed off on my expenses, they did. But from the 14th of February was their starting date. Anything that I had claimed after that period, I've paid it back. That's what I was asked to do, Deputy. That's what the board asked me to do. They are my employers, and I have done that. So, like, there's a full transparency here.
It's not credible, Mr. O'Donnell. I'll be honest.
You know
It's
what,
not credible.
Chair, the records are absolutely clear.
It's not credible, and Miss Bradley, it's not credible.
And to say that it's not,
you didn't seek
this
his change off HQ base until 2 weeks ago.
Can I say something, Chair? I think we're being very credible today. We're being very open, and we're being very honest to the committee. And I just find that this is about the 5th time we visited this, which is fine. It's the deputy's right to question. This was done in very good faith.
There is not a board member here today, Mr. O'Donnell. Where is your chief financial officer? Your chief financial officer. When have you taken over that role?
Since the 31st. We're in overtime. Since the 31st of
March.
Okay, thank you. Deputy McAuliffe.
Yeah, well, thanks to the witnesses for being here today. And I just want to sort of put in context the questions that the members have asked to date. I think you have been very open in the way you've answered the questions. The difficulty is that some of the responses have elicited more questions, and it's only right that members of the committee have an opportunity to follow up on those questions. I think we should all just take a moment. Our job is to try and get to the bottom of that. I would say one thing though. We are being there's lots of signposts here that there isn't a fully functioning relationship between the senior management team and the board in IFI, or there hasn't been, and that there are problems. And while €5,000 is not the be-all and end-all of the future of IFI, it does help sort of identify and illustrate the working relationships that were happening at the time. And I think that's why Deputy Dillon is very correct to try and focus on some of these issues. And I'm going to do it again. I suppose I find it really unusual how this arrangement began. And the reason I do is because hundreds of thousands of people right across Ireland changed their workplaces, carried out their work in different ways, in different manners. I can't think of any other scenario that I've heard of, even informally, and I'm on boards and so on, where a person's employment was changed. And so a change, and as a HR director, a change of employment means something. It carries an additional cost to the company. It's not about where you work, it's about your legal place of work for revenue and for purposes of travel and subsistence. I'll go back to Mr. O'Donnell just to ask the question. Are you saying that you did not request this? This idea did not come from you. You did not speak to Ms. Bradley. You did not speak to the chairman. This was something that was put to you for the first time.
I think as the head of HR has alluded to, she suggested it to me
first.
Yeah.
I'm asking you the question directly.
I'm saying.
Don't use Ms. Bradley's words to answer your question.
That is my recollection. It was then a discussion, a normal discussion. And then it progressed and evolved into my change of base.
So when you said earlier to Deputy Devlin that you contested the word sinister, I accept your right to do that. Bear with me. But in replying to that, you said if this was sinister, I wouldn't have asked for it. So did you ask for it, or did you not ask?
I didn't ask for it, okay. But I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have gone ahead with something as a senior public servant if I thought that I was genuinely doing something wrong, or the word sinister, or anything like that there. I mean, it's my job.
So, Mr. I'm removing you there from the initial timeline of how it initiated. So, Ms. Bradley, what came across your desk? What made you consider possibly changing the contract of the CEO, his place of work?
Okay. So, a number of things. The first thing was the previous CEO lived in Dublin and spent a lot of time in Dublin. All of our kind of support services posts, so anything in HR, finance, communications, they were all based in Dublin, even up as far as an AP grade post, right? And so there had kind of been a bit of a view, maybe in the regions, that all the nice jobs are in Dublin, right? So when I first came in, one of the first things I did was actually started splitting my team and started recruiting for my team, who had all been based in Dublin, in the regions. Right.
And was that a formal strategy, or was that just
no, that was a formal strategy. It was actually part of my HR strategy.
Yes.
Actually.
So you had a formal strategy to implement more diversified
exactly.
location.
Yeah.
Okay. When you made the change or proposed the change, you obviously realised that would have impact and cost for travel and subsistence.
Yeah. I suppose what I would say to you is that he was spending most of his time in Galway, right? Anyway, so to be honest, I didn't see that there was really much of a difference. To be honest,
The difference was, and as a HR director,
Yeah.
you'd notice the difference is that your travel and subsistence is paid from your place of employment.
absolutely. And to be honest, you
So
know what?
he could have worked in Timbuktu or
Yeah,
Reykjavik
I
or
understand
anywhere.
that, yeah.
The point is that changing the place of employment in the contract is a very
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
What made you consider that?
I suppose I probably didn't give it the weight that it was due, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And I have to say, in hindsight, I was only thinking about this recently. In hindsight, what I should have done was said, change your base, but we'll keep it that in terms of subsistence, it's your base or Dublin, like the way you'd have your base or home, you know, when you're claiming subsistence. It should have been your base, home, or,
So that follows on the question,
you know.
was anybody else's base changed?
So, well, I have changed people's bases.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But was anybody else's base changed as part of this policy at a senior level, or
Well, up to, yeah, I mean,
was you, for example, was your place of work changed?
No, it wasn't,
Was
no,
employment? No.
no.
Was that was
no,
Ms.
no one
Ms.
else
Gabby's
on the executive team. But as I said, we have done that in the past. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and it could be done for logical and
Yeah.
organisational reasons. I think it comes to the core of that an additional cost was levied on the
Yeah.
organisation.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Donnell was travelling. He was being reimbursed for the travel that he did.
Yeah.
He didn't gain any money for that.
Yeah.
Subsistence, you can make a few bob on subsistence, but by and large,
Not in Dublin.
You'd want to be working very hard.
Yeah.
My point is that Mr. O'Donnell did the work. He was reimbursed from a tax
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
But the issue here was that the company paid more money
Yeah.
when they already had a contractual arrangement with Mr. O'Donnell to not incur that cost.
Yeah, I understand that. As I said, in hindsight, I would make a different decision. I should say to you though, it genuinely was made with best intent. It was open. Everyone in my team knew about it. It wasn't a water cooler discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so
it was a honest error is
Yeah.
the point you're making. Okay. I suppose the next thing then is the signing off of changing the contracts with the CEO, and I think it's an unusual position because the CEO has no line boss at an administrative
Yeah.
level within the company. I suppose, would it be normal that you would go to the chair on different issues directly?
Yeah.
Like what sort
How
of?
do you mean?
Would you not? Would normally the reporting relationship is between the CEO and the board?
Yeah, I suppose the thing is, well, yes, I suppose, because it's an unusual situation to be in my position, because say when the last CEO was exiting, I would have been the conduit actually between him and the board, you know, managing his exit, which was an odd scenario because he ultimately was the person I reported into. So it is a weird scenario. I understand that. Yeah.
But I suppose that there was a level of informality there in board governance that probably, if it had been communicated by Mr. O'Donnell to the chair, it probably would have normally went through a board meeting or entered into a board pack and so on. But because of that informal connection between you and the chair, again, I think that points to an informality of governance that might have happened for very legitimate, logical reasons, but it was an informality of governance there that doesn't rest with you, by the way. It does rest with Mr. O'Donnell. You know, staff members shouldn't be reporting directly to the board on any operational issues. I think the only time I ever, as a board member, the only time I ever speak to a staff member is if I have to sign a director's form, or, you know, I would never speak to the head of wages or the head of, for any of the boards I'm on. I just think that's, again, it shows the level of informality. So can I switch to the department, because I think you've got a bit off the hook here, but we've been talking about IFI for a long time. There's a senior council review here. There's a McCann Fitzgerald review. There's a Garda investigation. There's effectively no fully functioning boards. Can you just give us an update as to where we are in terms of a full board appointment, in terms of the McCann Fitzgerald report, and in terms of why, when the senior council's report came back and said that there was no reason for the directors to resign, the board members to resign, they were asked to resign.
Well, the senior council report, the Bradley report, was completed in July of 22, and we received it in the Minister's office a short time later. I don't think it's quite accurate to say that there was no reason for the board to resign. The report is quite clear. And taking paragraph 103 of that report and reading in isolation does not present the accurate or entire picture here. I have the exact sentence here. If you'll bear with me, please, Deputy.
Of course, yeah.
I won't.
You're saying that as you're looking for it, you're saying the senior council report gave the basis for the removal of the.
No, I'm not. I didn't say that. Not at all. Sorry, I know it's at 103. Just coming here. Now, 100, 102, 103. There is not a basis from the alleged disclosures and the information and documentation which has been reviewed for the Minister to be satisfied that the functions of IFI are not being performed in an effective manner such as to affect the removal of the board. Below that, there are a series of very important recommendations made by Mr. Bradley in relation to the conduct of the board's business, which clearly indicate that the delivery was suboptimal. It wasn't sufficiently suboptimal as to affect a removal at that stage. You must remember this arrived into the Minister in July of 22. The Minister took the decision to remove the board in February 14, 2023. In the meantime, the board, the Minister asked the senior officials, including myself in the area, to meet with the board. The board accepted the recommendations, all of the recommendations, including the one you cited in the report, and agreed to move forward working with the executive, implement all of the recommendations in the report, and report back to the Minister.
Okay. And can I ask, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
the McCann, just because they were seeking documents, Chair, but the McCann Fitzgerald's report, where is that at this point?
That's in relation to protected disclosure.
Yes.
As I've said earlier, it would not be appropriate for me as the head of the division, looking after the governance of IFI, to be privy to that. So I don't even know what's in it. But
it's commissioned by the department.
Yes, and there is as I said earlier, there is already correspondence to the committee in that regard, and there are a number of disclosures.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if you're not in a position to respond on behalf of the department here today, could you seek a written reply to that question from the department?
What I can say, Deputy, is that the process which is being carried out under the department's policy for protected disclosures, under the aegis of the special unit dealing with that, which is not accessible to others in the department, and under the 2014 Protected Disclosures Act, must run its course. I've already updated the committee in the sense that the various protected disclosure investigations are at various stages, and once completed, I did offer to come back, or to have the department come back.
It was a simple question, Mr. Mayor. Can we get a written update as to where things are?
As soon as due process has taken place, of course.
Thank you.
It's important that that takes place.
The committee is asking where we are in the investigation. I think it's a legitimate question. We could be at the very beginning.
I'm not privy to that information.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not asking you for it.
Okay.
I'm asking you to get an update from the department on it.
Absolutely no. But can I just
commitment's been given by the
just answer
official.
one further question and one further clarification? The Minister, as you know, removed the board on a no-fault basis on 14 February. One of the reasons for that is that the recommendations of the Bradley report were not implemented by the board. Okay, that's a simple issue that arose. And also, I don't think it's been characterised here that IFI is in some way borderless or directionless. That is not the case. Section 18 of the Act is very, very specific, that the appointees are carrying out the full functions of a board. There is no board per se. In other words, under the Act, there are 10 members of the board, one is ex officio, but there are nine persons appointed by the Minister.
Clarify, Mr. Mayor, just on that, the two former county managers, they have powers and functions equivalent to what a board would normally have.
Their function under Section 18, Chair, is to manage the affairs, the statutory obligation and affairs of IFI.
Full authority under Section 18.
Full authority.
Okay, thanks for that. Deputy Murphy.
Very welcome, and like in the last 7 days we've had the horse regulatory body, we've had RTE, and we're having yourselves, and what we have had is a dysfunction overload in a week. I've got to say that is highly unusual in terms of the extent of it that we see at the Public Accounts Committee. You talked about the vocational nature and the opening statement of many of your staff, and I accept that, and I accept their morale must be on the floor, but it's not because of what's in the newspapers. All of this is self-inflicted damage. There would be not the adverse newspaper articles if there wasn't a basis for the adverse newspaper articles or media articles, whatever. And so I think your staff, rather than just ourselves or the public, require a very serious consideration of how you will make an apology to them, particularly people that are out working on fish kills and conservation issues. I think that's I think that's kind of self-evident. I want to start by asking you about the dormant account funding. You got 1.18 million, and that fund is really kind of confined. I mean, it's not everyone that would qualify for it. It's to go towards disadvantage and disability, and you obviously applied for this. And then there was subsequently 3 reports at the cost of 50,000, which is extraordinary. And there were governance issues identified. And I want to just kind of, because of a very limited amount of time, and that's why we're trying to get a lot in a very short period of time. So I wanted some short replies. There was an internal audit. Was that part of those 3 reviews? And one of the internal audit found that there was no justification for spending, for example, for the ploughing championship at I think 8,500, and the no trace expenditure of 17,500. Can you confirm that was a finding?
That's not correct. Actually, they said a proportion could have been that IFI should consider repaying a proportion of those amounts.
So as you applied for this money, the expectation would be that the money would have almost all gone to, with the exception of a small amount of administration, would have gone to a direct a direct advantage to people with disadvantage and disability. And yet there was a lot of money spent on, for example, salaries, overnight subsistence, things like the ploughing championships.
Okay, so none of the dormant accounts money went to the ploughing championships, Leave No Trace, or Visitor Safety in the Countryside Group, because IFI bore that cost. In relation to what we do for dormant accounts, it's projects and programmes that would assist the socially and economically disadvantaged, educationally disadvantaged, and persons with a disability. That's the legislation. So IFI is happy that everything we did was on plans and programmes that would assist those particular categories. I can only say that we were so privileged to do it. We have been inundated with requests since we stopped doing it, and we're really, I suppose, regretful that it has stopped.
Yeah, and did you return money?
Basically, we drew down money in arrears, so it was a net off of what we were drawing down.
And what was the amount that?
It was 29,740, something like that. Sorry, I don't know the exact amount.
Okay, somewhere in that order.
Yeah.
There were a small. I just want to ask you one particular thing before I go back, and I want to ask you about some of the legal fees. But I want to also ask you, there was an internal review in July 22, and again one in September 22, and the CEO reported potential fraud to An Garda Síochána in 2022. But it appears that that report was only made after the second review. There was 2 reviews, so after the second review, why was it not reported after the first review, if that was the case?
You're not talking about dormant accounts now?
No, I'm talking about the fraud investigation. The internal review in July 22 and September 22. There were 2 internal reviews.
Sorry, Deputy, now, internal reviews, can you be more specific, please?
I'm specifically talking about the fraud investigation.
Yes.
By An Garda Síochána.
Yes.
How many of those are there? Fraud investigations.
There's one.
Okay, so we're talking about the
one investigation.
Talking about the same
But
thing.
sorry, but I first reported the issues to the Gardaí, along with a number of other issues, not just fraud, in July, and I went again back to Gardaí and Ballyshannon in September and made a far more detailed statement.
Okay, so they were fully once they became you were aware of it. There was you reported it
Once
to the Gardaí.
once I was satisfied myself that there were very significant issues here, yes, I did. And I'm being very careful here now because, Deputy, there's a very, and the committee can have me back again, there's a very clear reason around the timelines of my making my reports. And if I was to speak to them, I could jeopardise the case.
Can I'm not. I don't need further expansions. Once we've got to that, there's an extraordinary amount of money spent on legal fees. Now, I fully accept the organisation will be prosecuting people, but people who are damaging the environment, and that's the nature of your job. But there seems to have been an escalation about 3 times the amount that you would normally have spent on legal fees in the last few years. Why is that? And what is the nature? Apart from the ones that we would be around prosecutions, what are the other areas that the legal fees are being spent on? There's one particular firm, Byrne, Wallace, Cokery and Moriarty. I think they're based in both Dublin and New York. I mean, what would they be, for example?
Deputy Murphy, can I go back to your last question in relation to the repayment? We got 300,000 drawn down in June 2021, but we only spent 256,000, so we had to give back 43,817. Our figures were based on the fact that the drawdown originally.
I want to get to the other reply, please.
No problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a net off against the drawdown. So in terms of the legal fees, Byrne Wallace got 157,000 in 2021, 235,000 in 2022, and 201,000 so far in 2023.
I'm not asking you how much you got because I know it's $1 million with when you amalgamate them all. So I know because I got a PQ reply on that. What were the outside of prosecutions? What was the nature of the spend that has escalated the spend on legals?
Okay, in 2021 we had 235,000 for prosecutions. We had 90,659 for ALAB. That's the judicial review into the Aquaculture Licensing Authority Board, or I'm not sure what the A means. We had 39,000 in relation to dormant accounts funding.
You spent 39,000 on legals around the dormant accounts fund.
Yeah, 29,000 on a report and a further 10,000 on legal advice. And then there was 25,000 for.
And is that 29,000 on the report included in that 50,000?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And 25,000 on various other, I won't call them bits and pieces, but like say HR advice, different, say, conveyancing or whatever.
And was the HR advice in relation to the issues around the board?
No.
Right, so it was internal staff.
This was 2021, yeah.
Okay. Just a bunch of questions. Just as a matter of interest, I mean, obviously the minister will go looking for, in terms of the budget, looking for additional funds. Are you, put yourself in the minister's position in relation to all of the things that have been that have come to light, not insuring vehicles, the dysfunction around the board, all of that, and ask yourself, for an organisation that you say is understaffed, requires technical people, and all of that. Do you honestly think that it is viable for the Minister to actually go and seek additional funding in the context of in the context of all that we're seeing in relation to this?
Can I take that question, Deputy? I think it certainly would be viable, and I say that in the context of.
Is it politically viable?
Well, I mean, we're here today to account for it. I think we've done that very honestly and very effectively. It doesn't change the mandate that we have, Deputy. We have a very significant environmental resource out there that we need to protect, we need to manage, we need to look after for current citizens and future citizens. So I think we're very well placed to do that. We're going to have a governance.
I've got to beg to differ.
Well, that's okay. But as the chief of the organisation, I have to stand up for IFI today and say that we're absolutely acceptant of the fact that we have governance issues. They're on the table now. We're discussing them. There's going to be a review undertaken by the board, and there'll be a new board in September. So, I mean, we're extremely cognizant of what has happened here. But it shouldn't mean that as a leader and as the executive team here that we wouldn't, like, it is a vocation. I'm fully committed to expanding IFI.
Can I just say that I think the vocational side is certainly the people out, with the wellies and,
Well, can I say it's not that long since I had the wellies on myself, Deputy, so.
Just you want to come in, just keep it a bit brief, yeah, thanks.
It helps the Deputy. I mean, legal costs, there have been a number of significant High Court challenges in recent years, which costs were mounted in relation to fishing rights owned by the state, and the expectation of the Department and from the Minister is that IFI would defend and vindicate those rights on behalf of citizens. And I think I don't think there's any demurring from the fact that that's extremely important, where people are coming to try and usurp the rights vested in the state from various parts of the state. So that's that's part of the legal issue, and as you know, the High Court can be quite expensive. Thankfully, we've secured and won the cases so far, and we will continue to vindicate the rights. That's done through IFI.
So
it's important.
Presumably it's the State Claims Agency that leads, so you do it directly?
We do it directly. Well, IFI do it directly with the support of the Chief State Solicitor's Office and obviously the Attorney General. And the other thing I want to say is that in relation to, the Minister's asked for a workforce plan for IFI, particularly around the protection, conservation, development, extremely important. We're in the middle of a biodiversity crisis. It has been understaffed for some time. We secured a small amount of staff for this year, but there's a workforce plan, and critical to that is that the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, their plan in terms of the removal of barriers of fish passage, which is required of the EU legislation, and they have asked IFI to deliver that given their expertise over many, many years.
The removal of barriers,
yes.
river barriers.
River barriers, yes.
Okay. And could you just ask you, and the board, the plan is to get a new board in place in September?
Well, I can update you very quickly on that. Obviously, the two very experienced Section 18 appointees acting in local board at the moment, well known, they will complete their governance review. That would be a template for the new board.
Along with the review, there's oversight from those two individuals as well.
Hugely important.
Okay. At the moment, can you confirm that? There's oversight, okay.
Absolutely, second to none, I can say.
Yeah, that's all right.
And the other element of that is that the template for the new board coming in, and both competitions, the Oireachtas Committee for the Department nominates a number of persons for appointment. The Minister does all the appointments, and then there are two other ministers who have an opportunity to nominate. But the three ministers, our own minister and those two ministers, have agreed to a common pass process. Those processes have been advertised, so we expect to have a new board in place once those competitions are finished. And PASS advises us that that's about 12 weeks from advertisement to having a panel in place.
Thank you. Could I just revert back to the Ashleigh Lodge? Correct pronunciation, I hope. It's a Victorian country house.
That's correct.
How many rooms are in it?
There's 8 rooms en suite, Chair.
8 rooms en suite.
And
a number of
2 reception rooms, a kitchen, and other facilities.
Area,
yes.
Yeah. And a hall for socialising in. those country houses had that.
Well, there isn't a hall. There's a small landing, but there isn't a hall. A small landing.
Okay. And there are 2 cottages.
That's correct,
Also.
Chair.
Close to the house.
They're with probably about 200 metres from the house.
Okay. Many acres are on the site?
20 acres, Chair.
20 acre site, okay. So, could you just ask in relation to this that when were there issues first flagged regarding Ashleigh Lodge?
Well,
just know it.
going back some time, because the property had
You came in 2020,
in November 2020.
in November. Did you hear about this straight away, fairly soon afterwards?
Not fairly soon afterwards.
Not fairly soon.
Not fairly soon afterwards.
Was
No.
it 2021 before you heard of it?
It was 2021 before I was aware of the leasing arrangements.
Right. You're aware of the existence of Ashleigh Lodge?
Of course I was.
Right, okay.
Chair.
So, were any of the witnesses that are here today aware of what was happening at the lodge or the cottages? Anyone here?
Yeah, I suppose, I was aware, I was involved in the last tender last year in relation to Ashleigh Lodge for tenants to
Were you
look
aware of
after.
any issues around the miscampion? Any of the significant issues
No.
around it?
No, I suppose what I was aware of since I took over the role was the issues that were happening in Ashleigh Lodge have been going on since IFI took it over, and before that, in relation to the board were the board were constantly concerned about Ashleigh Lodge,
Okay.
because I suppose it was operating at a loss.
Did anyone here from IFI ever visit the lodge? You did. Did you stay in the lodge? Anyone here ever stay in the lodge or holiday in the lodge?
Oh, sorry, I stayed in the lodge.
You
Sorry.
stayed in it for how
I
long?
stayed in for a night for when in the Central and Regional Fisheries Board's time for an NFME OMT meeting.
So, is it in relation to a meeting? Was that meeting on site
Yes.
the next day or something like that? Was
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, well, it was.
And Mr. Gallagher, you indicated you wish to reply to that briefly.
Yeah, I stayed there on one occasion. I remember attached to the lot is the National Smallhead Index catchment as a research station. So I stayed and paid my fee and stayed at the lodge on one occasion. A number of years ago.
Okay.
Can't remember exactly when.
There was an arrangement then where there was it was leased to an outside operator, and there was 84,000 of a loss in the previous 4 years. When it was leased to an external operator, and they pulled out in 2017, as I understand. And then, then there was an employee and spouse. They were successful in becoming a leasee at that point in 2017, or sometime after that. Was it 2017 or 18?
17, Chair.
Yeah. Now, you may not want to name the person, but what position would they hold within the organisation?
They were holding an admin role within the organisation.
A senior admin role.
I can ask the question, but I might identify them.
Right.
I suppose somewhere in the middle, Chair.
Middle. Okay. So middle management.
Not middle management, no.
Middle management.
No. On the administrative side,
Okay.
probably somewhere in the
Okay.
middle. Roshan could probably speak to that better.
It's an entry grade.
Okay.
Okay.
It's an entry grade.
Okay. Thank you for that. Why was it leased to an internal, somebody internal in the organisation?
Well, I'm going to put context around that, but I have stated, Chair, at an earlier discussion on this matter that it was a mistake and it shouldn't have happened. So I'm just going to repeat that for the record. From what I can gather, and I don't see, there is correspondence around this, the thought process was at the time that the property was for sale, and it was going to be very, very difficult to get anybody to actually lease the property. One of the issues was that if you leased the property from IFI, and IFI were fortunate enough to sell the property, you would get 10 weeks notice to vacate the property. The difficulty with that is that if you had customers or clients booked to come on holidays and stay on the property, obviously there was a significant risk there for the leasee.
Was the two cottages being used as well by the...
No, it was at that point, Chair. It was it was only the cottages that were
only
being used.
the cottages. The mansion wasn't being used.
Wasn't being used.
Okay.
So it was just the cottages. I want to make that clear. So yes, it was an internal decision. The board were appraised of it in March 2017 that somebody internally may lease the property. There is a note to that fact in the file. I found that note.
Yes, Mr. O'Donnell, who was responsible for putting that in place and who signed off on it?
It would have been signed off, I'm sure, at the time by I would imagine, Chair, in 2017, the former CEO.
Is there anybody here that was working in the organisation in 2017?
Yes, I was.
You were Miss Campbell. Would that be your understanding?
I would have thought it would have been the regional director
Okay.
at the time, but it could have been either.
And the regional director is no longer in place?
No.
Right, okay. And was there a business case or a feasibility case put forward for the use of the lodge at any point?
There has been recently, Chair.
Sure, okay.
I suppose the property couldn't be sold. We had the difficulties around leasing the property. I think just to explain to people that as you enter the property...
Sorry, just repeat that. The property couldn't be?
we couldn't get the property.
Yes.
It was on the market. It was on the market for 3 years.
3 years in 2017.
Yeah. Well, I suppose when you think about it, I don't know what...
There was an asking price on it, wasn't there?
There was an asking price.
By the Galway company.
And I don't believe that we reached that. The two cottages, in my view alone, are probably worth 500,000. The house probably another 400,000 or 500,000, and then 20 acres of land overlooking Killary Harbour, a very significant piece of real estate. Now it's in an SEC. I accept that.
Nice part of the country.
A beautiful part of the country. But one of the problems being as well, we have an operational base there, Chair. So smack bang in the middle of the property, 50 metres from the house.
Okay, it's not within the house, though.
It's not within the house, but it's right beside it.
Okay. And can I ask you just in relation, was there an offer of 800,000 on it?
I'd have to defer to I wasn't here, Chair, so I couldn't.
I don't know. I'll have to check that out.
Were you aware of any offers on it, Miss Campion?
I wasn't involved at that particular time, but I do have all the files relating to it, so I can check back. I can provide that to you in writing.
Chair, I would just say now, and we're talking about governance today, I would be confident we can go back and make a written submission to yourself and to the committee, but if there was an offer made, that the board would have been made aware of that offer.
So there's no sale, and it's sitting idle now for many years. The cottages and the mansion.
Well, the cottages are not being utilised at the moment because
the house
is not being utilised at the moment. We have offered it out to the Department of Children.
So this, I saw that.
Yeah.
So this country house and the tree and the two cottages, which are in fairly good condition, I understand.
They are.
Yeah.
So we've undertaken. So we were faced with this conundrum, Chair, as to what to do with the property. As I said, we have the two cottages on the outside, we have a working base, we have the house itself, and at the far side of the property we have the salmon index station, right, which is one of the most important research centres, okay? So we have to try and find a solution to where we are with this. We couldn't get it sold, so we commissioned a feasibility study around the future purpose of this property. So we didn't just pause it and not...
Where's that now? Because this is 3 years.
It's
a number of years now.
6
years. 6 years since it was decided to sell it. 3 years. There's it was on the market. 3 years it's sat there. Now we're in a situation where another 3 years have elapsed, and I don't see a proposal, a firm proposal today in terms of the use of it.
Can I say there is actually a proposal on the table, and at our last board meeting, our Section 18 board members asked myself and Suzanne Campion to bring forward basically a shortened version of the feasibility study to present to them, so that they could actually decide where this was going to go. Yes.
To the two appointed people by the department.
So it is actually in a process at the moment, Chair.
So there is a firm proposal now.
There is.
For 6 years, okay. So meanwhile, how much has been spent to date on plans, architects, auctioneers, environmental consultants?
Chair, can I just...
In terms of Ashleigh House.
In relation to the feasibility study?
No, so how much has been spent in total on it?
To date.
And feasibility study?
Professional fees since IFI took over amount to 45,641
What period is Campion?
from 2000 and mid 2010, 1st to the 7th, 2010 to date.
Okay. That's
Well,
the
sorry,
sum
to the end
total
of
of it.
2022, but yeah,
And has some woodlands been cleared there?
no,
There's no woodlands cleared.
no.
No
There was,
native
I think,
trees have been
there
removed.
there was a natural fall. Oh yeah.
Can I
sorry.
speak to that, Chairman?
Please.
We had a query had come into IFI about that. One tree fell on site. It wasn't removed from the site. It was actually cut up and left to biodegrade naturally. We're very conscious. There's an ancient Scots pine woodland there, and I mean, if we were to cut any trees down, we couldn't do that without planning. We wouldn't do it anyway if it can be avoided.
So I believe that the species of trees there is very important. Could I ask you that, just to conclude on the Ashleigh House thing, has any member of staff holidayed there during that period?
In the cottages or in the lodge?
In either.
I stayed myself in the lodge while a director in the WRBD, and
In the Victorian house.
not in the house, no, in the cottages, in the cottages.
Tell me about that.
With my family. I was down holidaying in the west of Ireland, and I paid like anybody else the full amount. Yes,
How long did
Yeah,
you
what's
stay
the
there
crack?
for?
I stayed there for 2 weeks.
Oh my,
What year was that in?
what are you on
I
about?
stayed, I think, in 20 and possibly 21 again.
Okay. Thanks for
Yeah, because in
clarification.
force, I'm here,
No,
right
just
now
put the
trying
numbers
to
back in.
scan in fucking rent yokes.
If we take 4 minutes each,
Whatever.
Deputy Cossack first.
1,000%.
I just want to stay on Ashleigh House just for a moment or two.
Rent fucking
What
receipts,
was
scan
planned
them
at
and send them
when
in to try to get the rental loans.
valuation?
Honest to God, I swear.
And we'd have to go back to the.
Yeah, I'm going back soon once I get this sorted.
Okay, well, I mean, it was always going to be one of the key issues discussed today. I would have expected those numbers. I wanted to ask as well whether the valuation was internal or whether it was an independent valuation.
I understand it was an external valuation.
Okay. I think we probably all would have expected information both on the valuations and on any offers that were made.
My apologies.
Very pertinent information. I want to, and Mr. O'Donnell, without personalising it, just one of the phrases that you used earlier was you talked about in any board you said there's a waxing and waning, and then you described it as a healthy environment to be in. I mean, and that's quite at odds. And I know you were talking about the board, but it's quite at odds to what you said, Ms. Bradley, in terms of there is a significant impact on staff morale. It just stood out to me. It was something that I had to come back on. This is not a natural waxing and waning of the board.
Can I respond to that and just say that I mean, having sat on a number of boards before, I would myself expect that the public would want boards to scrutinise and to challenge executives all the time. I meant in that context. I think that's a very, very healthy environment.
Yeah, I had to come back to it because it stood out to me. I wanted to ask just around note 6, remuneration and other pay costs. And so there's details here. One ex gratia payment totaling 3,600, 5 redundancy payments come to 21,600, and 5 settlements totaling over 40,000.
Swear me his life. What do you think I'm doing?
Before I ask as to the nature of those payments, I just wanted to ask a more general question whether there's any cases pending between IFI staff taken to the Workplace Relations Commission. How many?
3.
I know you can't give, you won't want to identify the employees, and it's further details that you can give us on those without identifying the employees.
Really, our organisation is just too small.
Yeah, I won't push you on that. Similarly, on the settlements and redundancy payments, and I realise your organisation is small. These are unusual payments.
Well, I should say to you that the redundancy payments, I should say that we have a cohort of staff that are externally funded through, for research projects. And if they do more than 104 weeks, they're entitled to a statutory redundancy payment, and we have to pay it.
Okay. The 5 settlements, so like I have this ex gratia.
fleet, and there were some old arrangements in place where people had vehicles but were not needed for operational reasons. In other words, maybe at some stage in the past they were, but we didn't believe that there was a reason for them to have an assigned vehicle, that if they needed a vehicle for work they could use a pool car. However, when I went back and looked at how long they had the vehicle for, they'd in some cases had it for over 20 years, right? So I had to buy those out. So I suppose what I always try to do when I address issues like that is to have a once-off scenario that then, that doesn't create a scenario to do. But I should say that was mediated through the WRC.
Okay, and that's helpful. Just one last thing about the ribs. We've paid a lot of money, 3.5 million for these 13 ribs. We've 16 coxswains. You have a staff training budget coming within spitting distance of $500,000, and only 3 people who are qualified to drive these ribs at night time. And that's the information that I have.
No, that's not accurate. I should say to you that 70% of our training budget is on regulatory training. That's water safety, boats, first aid. If you're in development, doing cutting trees, all that kind of stuff. So 70% of our budget is on regulatory training, because if you're a coxswain or you're in a boat or you do personal survival techniques, they all have a period of time. All first aid every 2 years, blah 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 blah. You have the numbers, Mary.
Yeah. So how many people? So we've these 13 ribs, and they're very valuable pieces of kit.
Yeah.
We want to have them out and in use as much as possible. How many people are equipped to drive them in the night time?
Yes, Deputy. We have 60 advanced coxswains within the organisation, and an additional 35 staff that are qualified to man the vessels. Now, I might add that all the 60 advanced coxswains are trained to do night navigation, radar, and use the vessels at night. I would accept that they don't all do it at night. Most of our work will be at last light and first light in the morning. So it's something that we have identified, and we are bringing forward a familiarisation course, that we could say, over the winter periods now, actually in the same location, Killary Harbour, where we'll bring additional staff through nighttime operations, but they are all qualified to do it.
And there's no training impediment to making best use of this equipment?
No. Absolutely.
Okay, that's
Thank you, Deputy Dillon. 4 minutes, Chair.
Just want to go back to the Donegal insurance issue. What date did IFI establish that they had no insurance on the subsequent?
August, the day that the accident occurred.
By what means was this information determined?
So obviously when the accident occurred, the employee contacted our health and safety manager. Health and safety manager obviously informed the logistics manager, who obviously then contacted the insurance company to advise them that an accident had occurred. And it was at that stage they said that vehicle, we haven't been notified that vehicle is on the fleet insurance.
10th of August 2021 was when it happened.
Yeah.
You were contacted. When did you report it to the board?
It was immediately, but I couldn't tell you exactly the date, but it was literally immediately.
Yes, Mr. O'Donnell.
I can just say, no, I know that I reported it to the board, and I reported it in real time as I found out about it.
Yeah.
I initially advised the board. I think the minute will probably match what I'm saying, that I thought it possibly was.
What date did the board
I'd have to check and come back to you on that. But as soon as I knew, it wasn't in my board report. It wasn't on the agenda. I found out in real time.
Have you minutes?
Oh, there will be minutes to that, of course. Yeah.
And we're aware that in November a report was brought to the board in relation to this. Is that correct? Of 2021.
There was the report was probably around the mitigation, the processes that we would have put in place to make sure that it didn't happen again. Yeah. But
in terms of establishing the facts, when were they brought to the board's attention?
Well, Deputy, I would have to check the record. I told them once I knew there will be a record of that, and that can be provided. There's no issue there. I remember getting a text message at the time, and I was advised that I think it was 7 vehicles, and then by the end of the meeting, I think he did the board say it was many more than that. So as soon as I knew it was very serious, and I knew that they needed to know immediately.
Deputy Murphy asked the question in relation to, did you report the insurance incident to An Garda Síochána?
I'll have to check with the logistics manager. I genuinely don't know myself.
Can you come back to the committee in relation to that information? Can I also ask what type of insurance discs are displayed on the windows of these 16 vehicles if insurance company didn't issue them? Because I'm sure any employee would look to see if there's insurance discs on their window.
I'll have to check. I don't know.
I can tell you they're normal insurance discs when they come from the lease companies.
Okay. Did the employee of IFI produce his insurance to the Gardaí within 10 days of the incidents occurred?
I don't believe he was asked to do so.
He wasn't asked?
No.
And have you
I can double check that, but I don't believe that was.
with the employee?
Sorry?
Did you discuss this with the employee?
We've had regular discussions with the employee because we wanted to offer support. You can imagine he was extremely distraught.
And was there a crash investigation carried out by IFI?
Yes.
And what was the result of that investigation?
The investigation was that the individual was driving within the speed limit at the time of the accident. The individual was driving behind the car that he crashed into. The car in front of him had quickly indicated to take a turn, and our employee rear-ended that individual and then pushed him into another car. So there's 3 cars involved. But I should say that individual was driving within the speed limit when it happened, and his driving history, which we have through the telematics, is excellent.
And have An Garda Síochána prosecuted anyone within IFI for having no insurance on their vehicles?
No.
So who will be ultimately responsible for any claims arising from the crash?
IFI will be, because we had hoped, we got into...
so IFI are going to take the hit in relation to this?
Would have to, yes, unfortunately.
And have you any expected costs that will be related to it?
I don't really want to discuss that because obviously there's a case pending. So if I was to put that into the open...
Final question, Chair. Anyone in IFI taking accountability for not insuring these vehicles? Has anyone?
Are you saying, did I... No.
Has anyone in IFI been held accountable?
Well, I'm not going to root out an individual on the basis that this was a case of staff being overworked, right? A number of systems failures, and I think rather than putting a culture of blame, I'd rather have a culture of people being free to put up their hand if an error happens. We all make mistakes, and then to make sure that we learn from them and we put in robust systems to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's the culture that I'd like to.
Final question, Chair.
So very briefly, because
can you just ask Mr. O'Donnell, did you pay full rates in Ashleigh cottages when you stayed there for
Yes.
And who did you pay it to?
I paid it to the person leasing it went through either went through my bank account. I paid it, I don't know, but I paid the full rates, and
how much did you pay?
Well, I can't tell you off the top of my head. Whatever I was asked to pay, whatever the rate was. No. There's a record of this in our finance department, because I think this came in as a protected disclosure about me already. We're not talking about them. I have no problem saying it. I'm under privilege here today, and it was fully looked at. There was no issue here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Just in your opening statement, you said there was a reference to 17 months of intimidation. Is that external or internal intimidation? Can you expand on the nature of it, please?
I suppose well, I mean, I want to be careful because I have spoken to the Gardaí, and I've put it clearly in my statement what I believed was happening to me. There was an internal investigation being managed internally within the organisation, not by me, by our HR department. I started getting letters at home, letters to my work, privately sent to me. I believe there was other significant harassment with me in my role as CEO.
It was exclusively around yourself, was it?
Well, actually, no, I don't believe. I believe other executives as well. Some very, very serious letters written to my own minister about me, making claims about me that were absolutely outrageous, very damaging, and very hurtful. But I suppose when you're managing, in particular, a Garda investigation of the nature that I'm managing, I suppose it's very, very important to have me held in very poor light by somebody, and that's as much as I'd like to say about it.
Okay, right. I want to then just the the Minister was on the record as saying there was 10 protected disclosures, but they don't appear to have been logged in the IFI. There's no record of them in IFI.
They didn't happen in 2021, and these are the 2021 accounts, but we have our Section 22 protected disclosure report ready to publish on our website.
How many
there were 10.
There were 10 in 2022.
Yeah.
That would be enormous in relation to...
Absolutely be enormous. The last time we had one was one in 2019, so there was a plethora of them.
Can I just say to the Deputy about that? While protected disclosures are very, very important around accountability, protected disclosures are often used and weaponised against individuals.
How many were validated?
Sorry?
How many were validated?
I have the report here. It's probably easier to read from it. And sorry, just while we're waiting, I will find it because there's lots of papers here. In relation to Ashleigh Lodge valuation, I've got that now. It was done by Keane Manley Smith, dated the 25th of September 2017. 800 for the lodge, 225 each of the cottages, coming to 450, and then it was estimating 1.2 million for the entire
parcel. And what was the offer, the highest offer made on it?
I'm still waiting to get that in.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you have to.
Just in relation to...
I think it was 790, but I don't want to lead you astray.
Parcel.
Yeah.
Just in relation to the lodge again, 2015 the contractor was appointed for 4 years, withdrew after a year. Was there a penalty clause for built into that because it was a 4-year contract? And who ultimately broke the contract?
The tenant had to be removed from the premises, so we had to get legals to get them out. They were not paying their rent, so they were removed from the property. Locks changed.
Okay.
In relation to the disclosures, so we had 7 anonymous disclosures, which alleged a number of different things: misuse of resources, recruitment, welfare, health and safety. Where feasible, the allegations were investigated, and where possible, appropriate corrective action was taken. We had 1 protected disclosure that was completed, and then there was a kind of a follow-up to that one, which was similar in nature from the same person. I understand now I have nothing to do with protected disclosure, so this is very top level.
If it was completed, what was the nature of it?
Basically, the report, which will be published on our website, says a further disclosure was breaches of health and safety protocols.
Then there's 2 others over and above that.
So there was 7 there. There was 1. Then there was a follow-up to that one, which it was on foot of the outcome of the investigation on the first one. It was decided not to progress the second one because it was basically rehashing the same thing, as I understand it, but I don't know any of the details. And at the end of this period, there's 1 disclosure outstanding, and relevant steps in managing disclosure have commenced. So
these were these all from present employees?
Well, the anonymous disclosures are saying they're employees, so I don't know. As I understand, anonymous makes it very difficult. From the named disclosure, I don't know the detail of it. I only know the top level that we will be reporting, so I don't know.
We don't know how many out of the 10 have been upheld or validated. Essentially, the support staff got that figure.
I suppose the health and safety one, there was an outcome on that. I have details of it.
I don't want to take up the meeting here, but just was there 5 upheld, 6, 7? Just the figure.
I have to come back to you. I just have the report that we will publish.
Most of them upheld, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know.
Can anyone
I'd say it would be half and half. Because I would know a good few of them.
You said that again, Ms.
I said it would be about half and half.
Half and half.
Yeah, about half and half. So that's what I'm saying. We can get you the details as in how many were taken and how many were upheld or not upheld and what actions were taken, if any at all.
Could I ask just in relation to, maybe Miss Campion is the one to take the question, in relation to Maharoe Sea Angling Club, that it was granted IFA funding. In what year was that?
In 2020.
2020, okay. And did they have a bank account at that stage?
They do now, but they didn't at the time.
In 2020 didn't have a bank account. You said they have now?
Yes, yeah.
But did they have one at that point?
No, I said they didn't.
No.
No.
Okay.
Can I give you
So, just wait till I just take you through a few questions I have, right? So, I want to try and structure this a little bit. So, if it didn't go into an account, when the money was allocated, where did it go?
Okay, so it was a reimbursement scheme. So,
Right.
I suppose.
But to reimburse them, I'm trying to figure out here now.
So basically,
You know the way this works, and so do I, right? That if you're reimbursing a body, an entity, for fees paid or costs on goods or whatever else, you would have to, and you're sending it to an entity. Okay, so the entity is Maharoe Sea Angling Club.
Yes.
Right? Who did it go to? Don't name the person, but who did it go to? Did it go into somebody's bank account?
No.
Where did it
So
go?
what happened was when Maharoe applied for the funds, along with all the other people who applied for an Angling for All grant, the grants or the applications were evaluated. There were a number of them. So you need to understand this. Sorry if I'm labouring it. The awards were made, or at least the announcement of the awards, they were given a letter of offer. They began all their work like everybody else, and then the IFI admin sent out the bank details. Please fill in the form. We need this to pay you the money. So Maharoe came back and said, sorry, we don't have a bank account. So at that stage, I suppose, in hindsight, we should have said, no, we're not giving it to you. But actually, we were very fortunate in that the Angling Council of Ireland, who are the only Sports Council of Ireland funded NGB for angling, agreed to do the procurement for Maharoe, and then by the purchase of stuff, yes, acted as the recipient,
okay.
and then they bought the stuff. It was €4,000 worth of fishing rods, scales, all small value. They then supplied IFI with full details of the purchases, 3 quotes on everything,
and invoices and receipts.
The invoice, receipts, and proof of payment.
Okay.
And then we paid the Angling Council of Ireland, and the Angling Council of Ireland gave the goods to Maharoe. Maharoe are now fully established with their bank account.
And the findings of the internal audit in relation to that, is there any other major issues come in that internal audit?
I suppose the way I treat audits is that they're there to help us and to make us stronger. They found, and it's what we've been saying from the beginning, that the angling club was a new angling club at the time of the application.
Yeah, and new clubs can be established.
Yes, and they had been operating, holding events and so on, but they wanted to formally establish.
But would you agree that awarding money to an entity? I'm not trying to pick on the club because they're voluntary people in a voluntary capacity,
yes,
doing their best in many circumstances with good intention,
yes,
and we've all been there and done that, unpaid, totally given their time to the community and
yes,
something that they're passionate about. But would you agree with me, Miss Campion, that allocating money to a particular entity, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on them, without them having a bank account and evidence of a bank account and the other pieces in place, is not good practice?
I would agree with you, yes, and in hindsight I wouldn't have done it, but I understood and I thought that with the Angling Council of Ireland, who are the most highly governanced angling NGB in the country, that we were okay. And as well as that, the club had affiliated before the award of funds with their national governing body. So to me, an affiliated body is a club.
And can I ask you just briefly as well, have any other instances like that cropped up?
Absolutely not.
No. Okay. That's fine.
Chair, can I just ask that maybe, given that there has been already, as the CEO has said, the information around your stay in the lodge, can you provide that to us?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. very briefly.
Brief question. Just might ask Mr. Maher from the department. Is it the department's intention that Ashleigh Lodge and its cottages will continue to be on the market?
Ashleigh Lodge is in the ownership of IFI. It's not under the department's ownership. Her function was, at the time, and remains, in relation to any sanctions that may be required from Deeper to acquire them. When the board decided to put the lodge up for sale, I did secure the agreement of Deeper for the sale. The board then changed its mind, and
has the board officially changed its mind?
That's my understanding. That's what communicated to me. I don't have the board minutes.
Can Mr. O'Donnell confirm that?
There's a board decision on this, and there's a second board decision asking me and the executive to go and undertake a feasibility study to consider the future purposing of the property.
You brought that feasibility study before?
Sorry, I haven't it with me today.
Well, not you brought it before the board?
I brought it before the old board. Yes.
Did they? What was their outcome of that? Did they
outcome,
accept it or refuse it?
No, they didn't refuse it. Their outcome of that was they asked myself, I think, Suzanne Campion, and the retired head of finance to work up some other figures. However, things developed at the board of IFI, and it wasn't prioritised. There were other issues, so it was sort of parked. However, the new Section 18 individuals are looking at this again now.
Mr. O'Donnell, have you ever attempted?
Just can you come back to us with, as soon as possible, just a development situation, right? My understanding is there may be a proposal to use it by IFI because you have an operational centre.
Yes, we do.
On site, and the use of it, because obviously it's a very important facility.
Can I just say, Chairman, it's a very important facility, and there's a strong political aspect to it as well. I know this is about money, and there's a strong connection locally with the property, with people living there, and I accept that the management of it could have been much better. It doesn't mean that I would have a knee-jerk reaction and do the wrong thing here, because it's very substantial. You asked a question earlier, Chair, about the offer. Ms. Campion has said we were looking for 1.2 million. There was an offer of 800,000 put on it on the 15th of October 2019.
Just one question.
Yeah, Chair, Ashleigh Lodge is in my constituency, so I have particular interest in relation to.
That's why I'm letting you back in.
IFI are into fisheries, not tourism. Okay, so I would take that, as a principle. But secondary to that, is IFI now seeking an additional €250,000? Have you got approval for capital expenditure to develop further offices at Ashleigh Lodge at the minute?
Well, our base, the working base there has been refurbished, and I'd have to ask my colleague Barry Fox here to answer that. But we have undertaken work in the last 6 months on the working base.
Have you got a board approval on that work?
There is board approval on it.
Who sanctioned it?
The board approved the capital plan in May 2022, in which the Ballinkill property staff buildings was included. The works include upgrading existing wiring to certification standard, insulation, dry lining of the second floor, installation of disabled toilet facilities, and so on.
So this is happening, Chair, at a time when the decision to sell Ashleigh Lodge and its cottages is still not clear.
How much?
Can I say that the decision?
How much was approved?
Costs, we've just finalised procurement, and the project was coming in at 219,000 before VAT.
Let you, Mr. Fox,
yeah.
Now I'm going to let Mr. O'Donnell briefly, and then I want to get in.
Just to say that the decision around Ashleigh is quite clear at the moment. It's not for sale, and it's incumbent on myself to try and, along with our current Section 18 board members and the new board, to purpose the property. We have a feasibility study there. We would probably, if the decision was taken not to go with that concept, then the property. I don't want to speak for a board. I'm sure in due course a board would consider that. However, they may consider asking us to go to a full business plan on this. I have yet to. I don't know that. But we are, like, I have been active in making sure that either way, it's about purposing the property for the public for the future.
Surely it would need a full business plan.
It would, of course, it would. I mean, a feasibility study,
right.
Chair, as you're well aware.
And there's dimension.
It is.
Okay. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Chair, just maybe to add additional information, the works that are undertaken in Ashleigh are specifically on our operational base. They're separate to the lodge and the 2 cottages. So this is an operational base for the operations staff and for storing vessels, etc. So it's a separate piece of work that was undertaken apart from the 2 cottages.
You had a question?
Yeah, I just will you supply us with the cost, the auctioneering fees that have been outlaid on this, because obviously it has been put up for sale, you know, and give us some sort of a profile of what has been spent on it, what kind of income has come in on it for the last say the last 5 years.
Well, maybe I think more appropriate maybe the past 6 years, well,
Yeah.
2017.
Yes, right, since 2017.
It was changed then, to be honest. Yeah,
We'll do that through the written process, Chair.
Okay, and Mr. Maher, you indicated.
No, just to clarify, you know, so I have the full history of all of this here beside me. The most important thing at the time that the sale was mooted and then approved by DEPA was retention of the fishery for the local population. For the research purpose, it's the National Salmonid Index, salmon and trout for the whole country. It's got a research station on it. It assists our reporting internationally and data. The most important thing was that we retained the fishery, not some fishing lodge. And I know what was said earlier, I can't remember by who, that the house was given to the state by the Braben family. It was actually sold by the sold. That's an important
Can
distinction.
you just
And the last thing, sorry,
is
that when the feasibility study comes forward, I know we're due to get a presentation on it, because the deeper circular also requires myself or somebody in the department to get sanctioned for a change of use.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing will happen without that.
Just to finish where we began, to fish, right? Okay, well, it's all about, or should be about anyway. Just, you know, I know I'm not an expert in it, I know very little about it, but I live in the most inland county, the only county that doesn't touch a county that touches the sea, okay? So, and you're correct, I mean, I remember a lot of freshwater trout in the rivers and everything, and it's, I mean, from what I'm hearing, it's a long time since I had a fishing rod in my hand, riding around on a bicycle, but what I would say to you is this, is that, I mean, it's accepted, and the recent report, I just saw the headline figures of it, shows that, I mean, it really being diminished, you know, and in whatever role in the department and yourselves in terms of, I mean, I'm not too sure how loud you bang the drum in terms of advocacy. Obviously, protection and management is your thing, but it really needs to be done, because this isn't just a fish life it's going to kill, you know, the habitat's being killed, this is catching up with all the human race as well. There's none of us going to be exempt from this, and just, you know, and look, there's serious issues out right here today. We've trashed out a lot of them. There's serious governance issues that have arisen. There's a number of different areas that's being covered. They've been given a good trashing out. You know, we need to start. We need to get into a better place. And you know, I can't overemphasize just, you know, the importance of the role that you're doing, and to wish you well in that, and you know, to get things onto a good foot in the new board, you know, full transparency, full accountability, and we'll move on from there. All right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And just with that,
Really appreciate those words.
so just to conclude, I want to thank the witnesses and the support staff, both from the department and Inland Fisheries, for the work involved in preparing for today. I want to thank the Control and Auditor General and the staff for attending, and Mary as well for the help that you've provided. It is agreed that the clerk will seek any follow-up information and carry out any redactions arising from the meeting as agreed. It is also agreed that we note and publish the public statements and briefing notes for today's meeting. Agreed.